NEC Section 501.5 states that when conduit enters an enclosure in a Class 1 Division 1 area, a seal-off must be installed within 18 inches of the enclosure. This requirement applies to both electrical and non-electrical conduits. However, in a situation where the conduit between two enclosures does not enter a Class 1 Division 1 area, but the enclosures themselves are in a Class 1 Division 1 area, the conduit is not explicitly required to have seal-offs according to NEC Section 501.5 for the conduit between the enclosures. There are exceptions outlined in NEC Section 501.5b that describe scenarios when seal-offs are not required, firstly for conduits that are less than 18 inches long, secondly for conduits that are used solely for grounding purposes, and thirdly for conduits that contain only instrumentation, signal, or communications wires. While seal-offs are not explicitly required for the conduit between enclosures in this scenario, it is generally recommended to install them as a best practice. This is especially true if the conduit contains any couplings or fittings. Seal-offs help to prevent the ingress of flammable gases or vapors into the conduit, which could potentially lead to an explosion if an ignition source is present. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to install seal-offs is the responsibility of the person. However, it is important to be aware of the potential risks involved and to make an informed decision based on the specific circumstances of the installation. The NEC or National Electrical Code specifically addresses the requirements for electrical installations in hazardous locations, including Class 1 Division 1 areas. Understanding these requirements is crucial for ensuring safety and preventing explosions or fires. In Class 1 Division 1 locations, flammable gases, vapors, or liquids are present in the air under normal operating conditions, or may be frequently present because of repair, maintenance, or leakage. The electrical equipment installed in these areas must be designed and installed to prevent ignition of these flammable substances. Seal-offs are a critical component of these safety measures. Their primary purpose is to prevent the passage of gases, vapors, or flames from one part of the electrical system to another, limiting the potential for an explosion to propagate. NEC Section 501.5 provides detailed guidelines on when and where seal-offs are required. As previously mentioned, a key rule is that seal-offs must be installed within 18 inches of enclosures that contain arcing, sparking, or high-temperature components. This rule applies to prevent any potential ignition within the enclosure from propagating through the conduit system. The 18-inch distance is measured from the enclosure's boundary to the point where the seal-off fitting is installed. It's important to note that this requirement applies regardless of whether the conduit contains electrical conductors or not. Even empty conduits can transmit flammable substances, so they must be sealed off. There are specific types of seal-off fittings that must be used in hazardous locations. These fittings are designed to withstand the pressure of an explosion and to prevent flames from escaping. They typically consist of a fitting body, a damming material such as sealing compound, and a means of securing the compound in place. The sealing compound must be listed for use in hazardous locations and must be compatible with the specific flammable substances present. Installation of seal-offs requires careful attention to detail. The conduit must be properly cleaned and prepared before the sealing compound is applied. The compound must be mixed according to the manufacturer's instructions and poured into the fitting until it completely fills the void. It's crucial to avoid air pockets or voids in a sealing compound, as these can compromise the integrity of the seal. After the compound has cured, it must be inspected to ensure that it is properly installed and that there are no cracks or gaps. If any defects are found, the seal-off must be replaced. While NEC Section 501.5 mandates seal-offs within 18 inches of enclosures in Class 1 Division 1 areas, there are some exceptions, as previously indicated. These exceptions are typically based on the principle that the risk of explosion propagation is minimal in certain situations. For example, seal-offs are not required for short conduit runs that do not contain any couplings or fittings. The rationale behind this exception is that a short, unbroken conduit run is unlikely to accumulate a significant amount of flammable substance. Another exception applies to conduits that are used solely for grounding purposes, as previously mentioned. Because grounding conductors do not carry electrical current under normal conditions, they are not considered an ignition source. However, it's important to verify that the grounding conductor is properly sized and installed to ensure that it can safely carry fault current in the event of a ground fault. Conduits containing only instrumentation, signal, or communications wires may also be exempt from the seal-off requirement. These types of circuits typically operate at low voltage and current levels and are not considered an ignition source. However, it's essential to verify that the wires are properly insulated and protected to prevent short circuits or ground faults. Even when seal-offs are not strictly required by code, it's often a good idea to install them as a best practice. Seal-offs provide an extra layer of protection against the ingress of flammable substances into the electrical system. They can also help to prevent the spread of explosions in the event of an ignition. In situations where there is any doubt about whether or not seal-offs are required, it's always best to err on the side of caution and install them. In this specific scenario of two enclosures in a Class 1 Division 1 area connected by a short conduit run, the NEC requirements can be interpreted in different ways. Some may argue that because the conduit does not directly enter a classified area, seal-offs are not strictly required. However, others may argue that because the enclosures are in a classified area, the conduit should be treated as an extension of the classified area and seal-offs should be installed. To resolve this ambiguity, it's often helpful to consult with a qualified electrical inspector or engineer. They can assess the specific installation and provide guidance on the appropriate course of action. They may also consider factors such as the type of flammable substances present, the operating temperature of the equipment, and the potential for leaks or spills. In addition to the NEC requirements, it's important to consider any applicable local codes or regulations. Some jurisdictions may have more stringent requirements for electrical installations in hazardous locations. It's also essential to follow the manufacturer's instructions for any equipment installed in the classified area. The manufacturer may have specific recommendations for seal-offs or other safety measures. Regular inspection and maintenance of electrical equipment in hazardous locations is crucial for ensuring continued safety. Seal-offs should be inspected periodically to ensure that they are in good condition and that there are no cracks or gaps in the sealing compound. Any damaged or defective seal-offs should be replaced immediately. Other electrical equipment such as enclosures, wiring, and grounding systems should also be inspected regularly. Any signs of damage, corrosion, or wear should be addressed promptly. Proper training of personnel who work in hazardous locations is essential for preventing accidents and ensuring compliance with safety regulations. Personnel should be trained to recognize the hazards associated with flammable substances and to follow safe work practices. They should also be trained to inspect electrical equipment and to identify potential problems. By following these guidelines, it's possible to minimize the risk of explosions or fires in Class 1 Division 1 areas and to ensure the safety of personnel and equipment. Remember that electrical safety in hazardous locations is a complex and multifaceted issue. It requires a thorough understanding of the NEC requirements, as well as careful attention to detail and a commitment to safety. In summary, NEC Section 501.5 A3 generally requires seal-offs within 18 inches of enclosures in Class 1 Division 1 areas. Exceptions exist for short conduit runs, grounding conduits, and conduits containing only instrumentation, signal, or communications wires. Installing seal-offs as a best practice, even when not strictly required, is recommended for added safety. Consulting with a qualified electrical inspector or engineer is advisable to resolve ambiguities and ensure compliance with local codes and regulations. Regular inspection and maintenance of electrical equipment, along with proper training of personnel, are crucial for maintaining safety in hazardous locations.